They call him Le Boss. Yet when this urbane Frenchman turned up at the most traditional of English football clubs, he may as well have come from the moon. 7 years ago, Arsene Wenger arrived here at Highbury, the home of Arsenal Football Club, to a welcome that ranged from the reticent to the downright rude. Arsene who sneered the newspapers, the fans, and even some of his players.
Arsene, does it worry you at all that you could walk down the street outside the ground and possibly there'll be some Arsenal supporters who would not recognise you?
No, I think I accept this idea very well. You see, it's me to prove that I have qualities, and if I do well here, people will recognize me.
The people I spoke to hadn't heard of him.
Surely if he's any good, wouldn't he be managing in Spain or Italy?
But their tone would soon change. He's the only non-British manager to have won the Premiership, and his methods are credited with modernising the English game.
It's another trophy for 52-year-old Arsene Wenger.
I've been coming here since I was 5 years old, and I was not the only one who had never seen anything quite like Arsene.
Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire.
He is one of football's great chameleons. How many other managers would have been able to succeed in cultures as diverse as flamboyant France, mysterious Japan, and insular England? Yet, to this day, little is known about this well-travelled enigma. Arsene gave the club known as Boring, Boring Arsenal a complete makeover. It wasn't just the 1-0 scorelines that went. Gone were the morning fry-ups, the afternoons at the bookies, the nights on the beers. Born was the new era of professionalism. But the great complexity of Wenger is that he has created a team famous for being both beauty and the beast.
Well, this is a mystery we're still trying to solve, because we all know he has this, placid and cerebral and humorous exterior, which is great to be around. But he also has a slightly Machiavellian streak inside him. There's a bit of a raging bull inside Arsene Wenger, I think, and that expresses itself on the pitch in some of his players.
Arsene grew up a world away from the highly prized and cosseted millionaires in the English Premiership. Looking back to his own playing days, most of his finer moments were spent as an amateur in his native Alsace. Arsene was born in the close-knit community of Dutlenheim, population around 2,000, and grew up over the family-run brasserie. Sitting on the Franco-German border in Alsace, Dutlenheim's been passed back and forth from French to German rule for centuries. Living in such a mixed culture had a crucial influence. Arsene says it taught him to open his mind.
I always wanted to live an international life. I never felt that I just wanted to live in my village. And maybe because I had influences on both sides, and because I could see there are good and bad everywhere, and there are good human beings on both sides. Because don't forget, I grew up after the Second World War, where it was really, don't cross the border, because the Germans are bad people. And I soon realized that the Germans had very good Germans as well, and especially when I grew up, Germany was much better football than France was. So my idols were more in Germany than in France at the time, and that's why I got connected, and certainly influenced a lot by German football as well.
How is Arsene perceived in France?
Arsene is perceived as somebody a bit from the outside. He's an Alsatian, and in many French people's minds, Alsatians are not 100% French. It's terrible to say that, because we've grown up on this idea, l'Alsace et la Lorraine, they're very much part of France, and he's very much a Frenchman. But the national characteristics are quite strong in terms of the way people speak. They're serious, very serious. They're bilingual, but their second language is German. So they are very different, and he is very different.
The influence I got when I was a child certainly had a big impact on the manager I am now. And I got maybe the values we got all through my generation in Alsace. It's work first, very hard, and then work hard again, and then it's still not enough. So I was maybe lucky enough to have a passion, and this passion was football, and then the fact that dedication was normal in the way I was brought up.
As a child, Arsene supported his father playing for the local village team. Once he was old enough, the roles were reversed.
Ces qualités, c'est la conscience professionnelle, c'est le travail qu'il fournit, hein, ça c'est ses qualités principales. Hein. Est-ce que c'est un peu ce qu'il a hérité là? Je n'en sais rien.
Today, you feel as if Wenger's presence permeates his boyhood club. Everyone around the place knows Arsene and is fiercely proud of Dutlenheim's most famous son. Hard work and professionalism are hallmarks of his management style. But the young Arsene wasn't always so focused.
Arsene, déjà, point de vue footballeur, il était bien, seulement feignant et intelligent. C'était vraiment le patron de l'équipe, comme on disait un petit peu.
Arsene avait son caractère, parce que je sais qu'Arsene, c'est certainement le seul joueur que j'ai vu sur le terrain répondre à notre président d'honneur et financier qui est M. Stahl, vous avez certainement entendu ce nom, qui lui a crié dessus, par-dessus le terrain, il a dit une petite insulte pas méchante, et Arsene s'est arrêté, il a mis le pied sur le ballon, il a dit « je vous emmerde ».
Young Arsene soon faced a big decision. Football or his studies.
Peut-être quand il avait l'âge de 17, 18, 19, 20 ans, peut-être qu'il avait fait l'une ou l'autre fois le mauvais choix, parce que je pense que Arsene avait quand même des qualités éventuellement pour faire une carrière professionnelle. Mais ça se décide à un moment donné. On prend le bon wagon, on ne le prend pas.
Mais moi, je ne voulais pas, je voulais qu'il termine les études d'abord. Voilà. C'était peut-être une faute. Hein, bon. Il avait commencé la médecine, hein, ça ne lui a pas plu. Hein. Mais ensuite, il a fait sciences économie. Bon. Là, il a terminé, oui, mais il avait toujours le football en tête. Hein.
Was there ever a conflict between education and football?
Never. Never, because football came always first. So it was never a real conflict. But I would say as well was no conflict because I didn't think that I was good enough a player to make a living in the game. And I didn't think at the time that I could become a football coach at all. At 16, 17, I was more thinking, what can I do of my life? I was gifted in sport, quite good at school, so everybody gave me advice, do maybe PA teacher or do mathematics or science, because I was quite okay. So in the end, I didn't know what to do, because I had no real passion apart from football.
Arsene played for a few amateur sides in the Alsace. He was a midfielder, better known for his shrewd reading of the game and organisational skills than technical gifts. Until at last he landed his big break at the region's top club, Racing Strasbourg.
Quand Arsene est arrivé, il devait surtout encadrer les jeunes. Mais comme nous, en équipe professionnelle, on avait un effectif assez réduit et qu'on jouait le championnat de France, la Coupe de France et la Coupe d'Europe, à un moment donné, on a eu quelques problèmes de blessures. Alors j'ai dû faire appel à Arsene et c'est ainsi qu'il a fait quelques matchs en équipe professionnelle.
As luck would have it, his playing career peaked when most footballers are thinking about hanging up their boots. He was almost 30 when Strasbourg won the league, and he played 3 matches. 1 year later, he retired. It was time to try his luck in coaching. He rose quickly up the ladder, and his journey to the elite was complete when he got the call for one of France's plum jobs. The top seat in the Principality of Monaco. He was only 37.
Like a sound you hear that lingers in your ear, but you can't forget from sundown to sunset. Nah.
This ordinary player was rapidly transforming into an extraordinary manager.
C'est vrai qu'il ne s'était pas frotté encore au niveau. Bon, en venant à l'AS Monaco, il se frottait au niveau avec des joueurs déjà starisés. Mais bon, il a su... C'est un caméléon, Arsene. Hein, vous savez, quel que soit l'endroit où il est, il arrive à s'adapter très vite et à montrer que il est présent et bien présent. Je crois que c'est sa grande force, c'est qu'il est capable de s'adapter n'importe où et très vite.
They were all top stars, and I think when you're coming into that sort of environment, it is an intimidating, I would say, an intimidating aspect of the job for a young coach to come into, and he just took it in his stride. You know, he knew what he wanted to get out of the players, he knew what sort of system he wanted.
For the first time in their history, Monaco became a major force. Thanks to the Wenger approach, they won trophies, signed world-class players, and nurtured a crop of young internationals who would go on to win top honours for France.
Il a laissé un souvenir à Monaco indélébile, je dirais, parce que il assistait aux réunions du centre de formation. Déjà, il s'intéressait beaucoup à la formation, d'où est sorti, je vous dis, des garçons comme Thierry Henry, Trezeguet, Thuram, Emmanuel Petit. Ça a été un garçon qui a toujours, c'est d'abord sa qualité première, c'est un grand travailleur, c'est un garçon qui ne ménage pas sa peine. S'il faut passer 10 heures par jour sur un terrain ou dans un bureau pour parler de football, voir des cassettes, s'informer sur les progrès du football, c'est sa grosse force. Ça. Donc Arsene Wenger a eu cette qualité-là et c'est pour ça qu'il a atteint le niveau que nous connaissons.
Drive and meticulous preparation weren't enough to ensure his team fought on a level playing field. Monaco were French champions in Wenger's first season, but it is one of his eternal regrets that he will never know how much more he might have won had his biggest rivals played fair. Monaco were twice runners-up behind Olympique Marseille, the guilty team in the worst corruption scandal to hit French football. The club president, Bernard Tapie, was convicted of match-fixing and ended up in prison. Marseille ended up relegated. Wenger ended up with only one French championship.
What was terrible is that he knew that he was working against the odds. It's like a cyclist on the Tour de France who is clean and who sees this guy who should be behind him zoom up the col and leaving him 15 minutes behind, and he knows that's not quite right, the guy's on something, and he knew it.
When the great Bayern Munich came calling, the offer was clearly tempting, but Monaco begged Arsene not to leave and he remained loyal. Mistake. After a poor start to the new season, they sacked him. So what next for this crestfallen and unexpectedly unemployed manager? It was the most surprising of moves, to the other side of the world, to a weird and not necessarily wonderful level of football in Japan, with Nagoya Grampus 8.
I came to an age at 44, I thought, I want to do something completely different. I need a pause in my life and to think about where I want to go in my life. It looked to me that it would be a challenge for, of course, my own potential to see if I can manage to live there and live in a completely different culture, and as well a way to move away from Europe. I felt I needed that. It was sometimes very, very difficult because you feel very, very isolated. You couldn't correspond with anybody because I couldn't speak the language. So you're much on your own, you cannot escape, you have no friends, nobody. And as well, very, very interesting because you have to face your real problems in your life. I found that you get to know what is important in your life and what is less important.
When Wenger arrived, Grampus 8 were languishing second bottom of the J-League. Not for long.
Suddenly, their team is like, quite nice, good teams. And then promoting to the second position and won the Emperor's Cup. It's similar to the FA Cup.
Wenger's system was not born in France. I think it was born in Japan, because he was given complete freedom. For the first time, he could experience the role of a manager in the English style.
Most of the Japanese spectators, fans, loved him because of the his statue is a little bit high and handsome, and not like a Beckham, but it's a different way. So he is one of the favorite, person on football in Japan.
Arsene reached a crossroads in his life. He became so immersed in Japanese culture, he felt he could have stayed there forever. But something dragged him back to Europe. On a personal level, he returned to be with girlfriend Annie, with whom he soon started a family. Professionally, he chose to answer the call of a club which had hit the rocks. Reeling from a bung scandal and confessions of drug and alcohol addictions within the ranks, Arsenal was the next challenge.
I guess it started that when he came over to see a match here, which must have been in the mid-80s, somebody said, did I know that Arsene Wenger, the Monaco manager, was in our cocktail lounge? So I popped in and introduced myself to him. He said he was just in town overnight and wanted to see the match. And I sort of casually said to him, well, what are you doing this evening? He said, nothing. I said, well, would you like to come out to dinner? And surprisingly, he said, okay. He said he wasn't doing anything. I think that actually changed his life. So we went out for dinner, and I kept my eye on him, thinking that, you know, perhaps one day that this man could be an Arsenal manager. I actually discussed it with the board, and they thought, well, maybe it was too much of a risk. And in the end, we took on Bruce Rioch for the season. And then when that didn't work out, I thought it was a bit more forceful second time round. I said to the board, you know, this guy is a bit special. I said, I think I would stake my reputation on him.
I can remember the newspapers tipping the people who might take over, and there were all these names mentioned, like Terry Venables and Johan Cruyff and all these glamorous people, and there was one name at the end which seemed very strange, which was Arsene Wenger, and it was a bit like when you see a name you don't recognise in a multiple choice question, you think, oh, I bet it's that one, because I've never heard of him, and there'd be no reason for him to be there unless somebody knew something. And it just seemed like the typical sort of rather dull, unglamorous Arsenal appointment. I mean, our previous two managers had come from Bolton and Millwall.
Arsene was proud to come to England, the birthplace of football, but found a nation sceptical of foreigners, change, and him.
The day we actually was unveiled at the press conference, the headlines was Arsene who?
Certainly at the football club, the people I spoke to hadn't heard of him, so I was quite excited. The fact that we'd never heard of him was something new that we were all looking forward to, and turned out to be not a bad choice in the end.
But it wasn't all easy when Wenger started work in North London. Almost immediately, he faced a malicious and unfounded smear campaign. It was extremely hurtful.
He was really shocked by the nastiness of the attacks. He says very often that his stay in Japan has enabled him to look at himself and reevaluate himself and the things which are important to him in life as well as in football, and that he's, I wouldn't use the cliche, but he's gotten some kind of inner peace while he was there. He's become far more zen in Japan than he was before. I think the Arsene Wenger of Monaco, if he hadn't been to Japan, the Arsene Wenger of Monaco would have reacted very differently from the Arsene who reacted when the press made all these allegations. It certainly would have, it might have even threatened him staying at the club, at Arsenal.
He keeps his privacy here, and presumably people are none the wiser about him over there.
No, not at all. He never talks about it. He has got friends from his native Alsace whom he talks to regularly, but he has always kept this screen around his private life.
Getting stuck in at Highbury, he was smart enough to encourage English footballing strengths like team spirit, while tackling the less refined of Anglo-Saxon habits.
It's a total revolution in quality of football and culture. I mean, there was a drinking culture at the club, let's be very clear about it. And he has revolutionised the training methods. If you go to our training ground at London Colney, you will see it's a state-of-the-art environment to bring the best out of the players. So today, the players are more conscious than ever before about what they eat, how they behave, what they do, where they go. They have to be truly professional. And the older boys, if you ask Tony Adams and Martin Keown and David Seaman, he's actually prolonged their careers by the fact that they now realise they have to look after their bodies.
Seaman, what a magnificent save! Breathtaking!
He lets you play. He lets you do what you're good at, and then he'll tweak little things around that your general game that he thinks might need doing, but he will always let you do what you're strong at. You know, and it's amazing because it's hard to say what he does, you know, but it's just by letting people go and do what they're good at.
Well, it's been much more like going to the cinema or a theatre in terms of you know that you're going to see something fantastically entertaining.
How does he do it? Part of his knack is a special ability to discover and nurture new talent, all players other managers have discarded. Thanks to Wenger's keen eye, the likes of Vieira, Anelka, Henry and Pires have exploded onto the world stage.
It's always the impression I have on the impact, on the first impact when I see a player, that makes me determined to, if I have a chance one day, I will do it.
Has it become more difficult?
It is much more difficult because you have a reputation. Once we see, okay, we have seen a good player there, our scouts have seen a good player somewhere, they say, oh, Arsene is there, and they use it straight away to a lot of other people. So we are not only on the case, but there's still some good players to find.
As a rule, managers in England would expect to be feared and respected, not loved, but that's not the case with Arsene. His players show genuine affection and unquestioned loyalty to him, and vice versa.
I think that is the most remarkable of all his achievements. If Patrick Vieira sees this contract out that he's just signed, he'll be entitled to a testimonial, you know, because he'll have been at the club for 10 years, and I think that's astonishing in this market, that one of the best players in the world with no previous connection to the club is prepared to commit himself for that long.
Since he made me come into the club, he changed me in the way that he made me believe in my quality, in myself, make me work really hard, make me improve as a player, but as a human being as well.
He admires them, and he says so. When he says my players are great players, he really believes it. I don't think it's a case of the journeyman footballer turned coach who is in awe of other players who are far more talented than he was. Is that he has a genuine love of football and of beautiful football, and he's got tremendous admiration for the players, and admiration that is given without expecting anything in response. Is their number one fan.
I want to say a special thanks to somebody in the house. Coach, could you please come?
That bond was never more apparent than when George Weah, whose career took off when Wenger brought him from Africa to Monaco, was awarded World Player of the Year.
When I came to Europe, he was like a father to me, not only a coach. He monitored everything I do in Monaco. I followed his example. He made me a good man. So I will give him this, because he deserves this more than I do. Thanks, Mr. Coach, for everything.
It's mystifying that a cerebral man should coach such a hot-tempered team.
Certainly going to be a card. The question is, what is the colour? It's red.
Arsenal's reputation for indiscipline is the biggest criticism levelled at him, illustrated by a record number of red cards. And then there is the red mist. This season we are seeing it again, and after Arsenal's yobbish explosion at Old Trafford, Wenger stands accused of failing to control his players and having a myopic view of their misbehaviour.
A team with a relatively small first-team squad cannot afford to have players constantly on the touchline serving FA suspensions. So this has the potential to put Arsenal out of the championship race. It's actually in the club's own interest now, I think, to say, right, enough is enough. We need to impose a bit more discipline on ourselves.
A lot of newspapers and things have blamed Wenger. Do you blame Wenger?
Well, I don't blame him, but I think the responsibility rests with him because only he can stop it. And these players have immense respect for the manager. And if he was to call them together at London Colney and say, look, chaps, you know, we're going to ruin our season like this and attract an awful lot of adverse publicity. If he was to do that and make these players understand how much it damages Arsenal Football Club, I think you would see an immediate change in the problem.
He's a very loyal man, fiercely loyal. He's proved it in his dealings with his clubs, and he's also fiercely loyal with his players. He defends them in every circumstance.
There is a possibility of action being taken because Patrick Vieira got very upset when he came off. I mean, there are stories that he swung his arm at a policeman.
I don't know about that. I just think the action will be taken about the fact that he didn't deserve to be sent off and that the referee has been cheated.
Even in the extremes of incidents on the football pitch, he will always stand by his players. Once you have that and you have the trust of your player will do anything. He will go out there and he'll listen to everything you've got to say, and he will follow it through for you and some more.
Father figure, transfer dealer, team builder. Wenger inspired Arsenal to win the League and Cup double twice, a remarkable achievement. But last season they wobbled and threw away the title to great rivals Manchester United. The war of words between Arsene Wenger and Sir Alex Ferguson was, as ever, a hot topic for the tabloids.
For the last decade, both of us have really been fine with this Premiership, tooth and nail, and there have been some great battles. I respect Arsene. I think that he's done a fantastic job at his club. He says certain things that intrigue me, but no more than that.
His relationship with Ferguson is nothing as bad as people would say. They are not mates, that's for sure. It's such a manner for the media, but I don't think that it's something that keeps him awake at all.
Arsene doesn't worry what others think of him. He's got enough on his plate anyway. Plans to move to a new stadium just 500 yards away at Ashburton Grove have been fraught, and funds for new players are tight. Latest figures show Arsenal are burdened by heavy debt. So, what's next for Arsene Wenger? Is his future here, amongst the cranes and the rubble at the site of Arsenal's new stadium? Will he be leading his team out here in a few years' time? Or will it be au revoir? One thing is certain, this football chameleon won't struggle to blend in, whatever the challenge.
If I were David Dean, I'd be quite frightened about how you follow Arsene.
I've always said that the day that he decides, and it will be his decision, I'm sure, that he doesn't want to be a coach anymore, there has to be a place on the board for him as technical director, because a talent like his should not be wasted. You know, we want to keep it harnessed at Arsenal Football Club.
No Arsenal fan will accept a step backwards now, I don't think. We've really become spoilt by what we've seen, and the people really have a taste for it now.
The biggest testament to what he has achieved is that Arsene Who has now been recognised by the establishment.
It is with great pleasure that on Her Majesty's behalf I present you with the badge of the Order.
But personal honours aren't his motivation. If you think the next step is Madrid or Milan, you could be wrong. He's just as likely to return to the roots of football, and there'll always be a welcome back home in Alsace.
Il viendra d'ailleurs peut-être un jour, peut-être. Il finira son contrat, ça c'est certain, à Arsenal, mais il viendra peut-être un jour de nouveau Racing.
I hope he's not in a hurry. It is often said you don't realise the true value of something until it's gone. And English football would be a lot more boring if he moves on. Can you imagine a life without football?
Frankly, no. I think it's too late now to think that I can get rid of that sometimes maybe too intrusive passion, but I can imagine different ways of continuing my life if I'm, touch wood, lucky enough to be healthy, but the day I won't be able to manage anymore, or don't want anymore to do it at that level, maybe to become a director. But I'm even more, I feel attracted by teaching youth in Africa or in India or somewhere like that, where nothing happened until now, when there's a completely different life.
The purity of football when you go back to basics?
Well, I feel yes, because what attracts players, even, you look at my players, they are professional football players, but they're happy when they're out there and they forget who they are and are in the game. And that's where I enjoy this. Well, every manager will give you the same answer. When you find that the moments of really happiness is when the players are out there and enjoy it, like kids, what we are all.